Hi everyone, my name is Braylon and welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I'm a special ed teacher. I teach a self-contained classroom of first graders through fourth graders, and I love what I do. I love my job. It is so much fun. Normally, I'm vlogging and talking about all of the things that I'm doing throughout the week in my classroom and at home, but today I actually wanted to shift and talk about curriculum. If you're a teacher like me and you have many different grades and many different skill levels, tons of IEP goals and all of those things, you are always trying to find a way to combine everything together and make it a cohesive classroom. So in this video, I'm going to break down and show tons of examples of how I use Made For Me literacy in my whole group and small group instruction, and how I incorporate those real world life skills, scenarios, and experiences. So really quickly, I want to talk about what Made For Me literacy actually is and just how it's meant to be used. So it's a full curriculum that you can purchase off of Teachers Pay Teachers, but each unit comes with 4 weeks of content. A read aloud that's either fiction or nonfiction, vocabulary, anchor chart materials, task boxes, file folder activities, writing books and writing journals. It also comes with many crafts and a recipe, just as well as like many activities and worksheets, whether it's matching literacy and math specific worksheets. A lot of times students need the academic knowledge, but they also need life skills and real world examples and like experiences essentially in order to have a really well-rounded education, and in order to leave school or even leave my classroom with tons of skills. I want my students not only to be able to communicate or comprehend or add things together, but I also want them to be able to know how to function in society. But what I'm finding is that within everything that we do, there are ways to incorporate other options, ways to generalize these skills, whether it be the vocabulary or recognizing different objects, labeling things. There's a way for that to happen, not just in isolation at a small group table with a task box or with a file folder activity, but there are ways to still be at that small group table and expose them to real world objects, read signs and all of these different things. So I know it's a lot of prep, but the fastest way I thought that we could show how one preps materials like this is a quick montage. Everybody loves a good montage. So here we go. Here it is. So we're here in class. Now let's get actually into the nitty-gritty of utilizing this curriculum and incorporating some real life examples, scenarios, and life skills. I had this idea for this video, and then as I was here today kind of setting things up for this video, I realized that I use a lot of real world stuff, and that includes students' names and students' pictures. So please bear with me when I show you some of the pieces in this classroom, if I have to cover things or I kind of have to zoom in on certain things, because I don't want my students' faces or my students' names to be on the internet, obviously. Something else to note is that currently, it is the end of September, beginning of October when I'm making this in my classroom. And because I've been using Made For Me literacy for a few years, I'm currently working on a few different units. So we're talking about apples, which is a different unit. I'm also incorporating taking care of myself, which is a separate unit. And then for math, we're doing a little bit of counting from 1 to 5, which is a separate Made For Me literacy unit. I say all that not because I'm saying go purchase all of them. You'll see many different themes as we start talking, and I really want to make sure that you can see many different options from different units and different bundles, but also it's just real life in my classroom. So let's get started, and I want to talk a little bit about whole group first to make sure that they're staying on task. But honestly, it has been really great and such a blessing to have the digital component, especially when it comes to tracking IEP goals and tracking their overall skills. Part of making sure that we're taking care of ourselves, which is the name of the unit that we're currently doing. So one of the things that we did actually today, there are two things I'm going to show you that we did literally today in class, was fold. Part of the unit that we're currently doing has a lot to do with taking care of your body and taking care of yourself. And so putting on clothes, and I thought it would be easier to practice folding towels first before we got into folding actual clothes. So there was an entire small group that folded towels. These towels are like $3 from Target. And it went really well. They had a great time. Then the paraprofessional who was with them talked about like, where would you use this? In the shower? Okay, show me how you would, wash your face, wash your arms, things like that. And that was so fun and so engaging. Okay, so here's what we actually did today. We did an exploration of apples. Half of the apples came from the school cafeteria. We had been working on the vocabulary of apples. We read a lot of apple books this month. We did the tasks for apples, which come in the unit, and they're pretty easy to do. And then we also did some of the activities and worksheets like labeling, counting, working on some higher math skills and some higher reading skills with apples. But I thought it would be good to kind of use that in a real world context. So to use that in a real way. So we actually had them explore with apples. So I think you can kind of see they're kind of getting a little brown, but they utilized some utensils. I didn't want to give them knives, so I just gave them forks and spoons. They cut up different pieces. They actually drew some of it. They got to look at the actual seeds. Some students even kind of glued the seeds to the paper that they were working on. And I found these at Target, I think. They're from Target. And so they could portion out. So some students would portion out the seeds and then, the apple skin and different things like that. It was also good. It worked on some of their fine motor, so it all was applicable. And a lot of students really had a ton of fun, and it was kind of a good way to use the vocabulary and the skills that they've learned and make them go deeper. All right. So we're standing in my whole group area, and usually this is where we start most of our lessons. And when I start doing Made For Me literacy, this year especially, there's a lot more digital components and digital like anchor charts, which is something that's super helpful. So when we read a story, whatever it may be, this month we read about apples, we read Sick Simon, a few different books, we will always do the anchor chart on the board digitally. I'm a little dark because I need to show something that's really bright, but this is the digital component. It's on Google Slides, and essentially you can type in it or you can drag for different anchor charts. This is always where we start. Now, when I incorporate the real world stuff, a lot of times I'll incorporate different pictures. So my students might have their pictures on here depending on what the activity is. We might incorporate pictures from our community, like actual pictures from outside. So for example, when we were talking about our community last month, which was one of the first units, we went around the school and took pictures of the different staff members, the different important places in the school. Then we had a day where we did a scavenger hunt with iPads and or staff phones, and we took pictures around the classroom and around our like school building and community, just so that my students can not only see the words that we're putting on the anchor chart, but they're actually taking real pictures of real things that they're going to see every single day. I obviously can't show you those pictures because it has everybody in them, but that's a really simple and free way to do it. We then actually took the pictures, made a booklet, and then my students were able to flip through the book when we started going through the vocabulary words about our school and class community. They were able to kind of use that to answer the questions. I'll almost kind of like a core words, but in book form. So there are a few things that I want to highlight here. Sorry this is so technical, but I'm just trying to show you things in the classroom that feel really realistic. For this unit, this is Taking Care of Me, which is unit 2 in level C. And there's one element that talked about feelings. I had to recreate it because I couldn't show you all, obviously, my students. But we actually, not only did we label what the emotions are, but we actually took photos of different students with that emotion on their face and we put it here. Then what we did was we went around through the school and just in the neighborhood, and we took pictures of things that made us feel happy and made us feel sad or made us feel excited. And so my students actually made their own books about what happens when you feel happy and how can I feel happy again? What happens if you feel sad and how can I feel better when I'm feeling sad? And so all of those experiences were really helpful, and it gave them a real world opportunity, not only to use the word, but to kind of put it into practice. So as you can see behind me, this says the grocery store. One of the last things that we're currently doing, and I think is one of the best things to do, is a small field trip. So I want to give credit where credit is due. I did not come up with the idea to do the field trip. The speech pathologist, the occupational therapist, their incredible brains decided it would be a really great way to end our time of talking about taking care of ourselves and food and apples and fall and harvest time to go and do a field trip. So we're actually going to the grocery store next week. And we've been practicing so many things around the grocery store. We have been working on following lists, which is separate from the unit. But within the unit, we've talked about how to keep our bodies safe, healthy foods versus unhealthy foods. And so it all kind of culminated to this field trip and this social story. Utilizing the vocabulary and the things that we've been able to do, we had a really amazing social story, which I can't show you all the pictures because some of the staff actually walked to the grocery store, took pictures of the grocery store, what the students will see, and highlighted and labeled some of the vocabulary words that we have this month. My students, I wish I could have made this video after they went, but my students are really excited to go and they're really pumped to bring along their journals in order to draw and bring along their new skills that they've learned throughout this time. Also, grocery stores are great because they don't just have food, they have like toothbrushes, toothpaste, and all of those things. They're very excited. Okay, so you're getting a strange angle of my face. I'm gonna have a hard time showing you this next part, but this also goes along with taking care of me. I'm just using real examples in my classroom from this month. One of the skills we were working on was actually washing our hands. Now, one of the elements of this is for an anchor chart, which I think is great, and a lot of anchor charts can be super helpful, but a lot of times, unless I'm directing my students to an anchor chart, or I'm bringing it up again and again and again in lessons, it's not really gonna be used and it's not gonna be generalized. Kind of going off of this, I took all of these pieces and then my students and I actually recreated the steps with pictures that we took. I used my phone, and so I have to highlight and cover up some of my students' faces. But see, we took a picture of the soap, obviously. Okay, this one's a little harder to see, but we took a picture of the sink, and that was super helpful for them. Then we took a picture of them utilizing each of the pieces, the sink, the paper towel, and all of that. And then we were able to make our own slideshow, and actually there's a classroom that's nearby. My students went and presented their slideshow to another class. And with that other class, when they presented it, they still used these pictures, but they were also able to show their own pictures. I want to highlight that obviously real world experiences and examples are helpful, but sometimes you do need to kind of reinforce the vocabulary and the actual steps. So we did do a lot of the activities like the cutting and the pasting, the sequencing, and all of the things that went along with this unit. For my small groups, I tend to have one group that is just doing digital activities. And although real world experiences are great, sometimes it's good to get the actual data of how students are doing. And I love using boom cards because it tracks the data for you. So when I plan my small groups, there's always a group that's doing boom card decks, which take the data for you And then I can see, okay, we're starting to figure this out. We're starting to remember the vocabulary, put things together, work on some IEP goals, and all of that is super helpful. So you can't really see me, but that's because I want you to see the screen. If you're not familiar with Boom, I'm pretty sure it's free for teachers. I think it costs more to add more kids, but essentially you can find so many decks that are free. You start with an activity.
Where do you go when you are sick?
And so it even speaks for you. For some of my students, they'll use their headphones and they answer the question. If it's wrong, it'll be like that. And if it's correct, it will be like that. So students are able to use this and complete as many decks as they can. I will usually have a staff member with them. Here's some other things that I do that I can't necessarily show you a picture of. Whenever there's a reader of some kind, a leveled reader or a nonfiction reader, I will print off extra and I will send it home. I usually send home a letter at the beginning of each unit to tell parents what we're working on for this whole month. And this month, because we were working on, because we were working on apples and taking care of ourselves, parents have really been invested and involved. They've sent me really cool photos of students brushing their teeth, of washing their hands. They've been practicing reading those leveled readers and getting really excited about our field trip coming up. Less exciting things is like when you're teaching math and it's whatever unit, whether you're using Made For Me Literacy or anything else. Telling parents about the skills they're working on. I had a parent who texted me saying that they went to the grocery store and they went to the laundromat and they were able to count as they went, and they utilized things within the space that they had in order to count them and label them. And that is such an important skill. And I've really been impressed and excited with what people are doing at home and how my students are utilizing it here in the classroom. So that was a lot. And I only really talked about a couple of units. Next month, we're talking about nocturnal animals and we're talking about bats and owls, and also we're working on counting to 20 and patterning and shapes. There's a lot going on, and that's not as applicable to work on like life skills and real world scenarios, but you bet your bottom dollar we're definitely doing it. I don't have like tangible examples of what we're doing because it's next month, but my plan is to do a walk in the neighborhood and look for places that bats could live and take pictures of that. We are working on all of the foods that bats and owls eat, and we will be collecting those and putting them into categories. Specifically for nocturnal animals, we're going to talk about the nighttime, and I think I'm going to have students at home either take pictures or videos of what it looks like at their house at night and some of the sounds that they hear. There's a lot that we can still do with nocturnal animals, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be so much fun, and we're going to have a blast. All right. I just threw a ton of information at you and so many examples. Although the list is not exhaustive by any means, I hope that maybe this got some people's juices flowing or some ideas coming to mind of how they can just incorporate subtle things into what they're doing in their lessons. And obviously I'm using Made For Me Literacy as an example because I really love how it's structured, but it doesn't have to always be like that. You could utilize so many things in your classroom and mix in some elements from either Made For Me Literacy or from things that you've created yourself and really make a really comprehensive and cohesive unit and plan that really meets your students' needs. And not just academic skills, but life skills as well. I am forever grateful for this channel, for you all, for all of the amazing things that we get to do together, the amazing community of special educators that exist that make me feel less lonely and make me feel like I have a place to find ideas and inspiration and a little bit of hope when things get a little difficult. But you guys are amazing and I'm so grateful for you. That was all I had for the video. That's it. I hope you had fun and I will see you in the next video. Bye!